understand when they went to Holland and Sweden why they were treated so well, and they did abuse that privilege. But at one time, the black soldier in Sweden and Holland was treated like kings. Many of the black soldiers opened businesses there and owned huge tracts of land, and they thought it was because they were very unique. It was because they were very unique, but it was also because of the history of Sweden, which they didn't stop to study or hadn't been told. The first royal blood, the first progenitor in Sweden, was Queen Bernadotte. Queen Bernadotte. She was the daughter of an African woman from Morocco. She married a Caucasian Frenchman in the south of France, and they had 3 children. And on the frontispiece of Nature Knows No Cover line is what Rogers tried to show everybody to start their research with. Her name is Charlotte Sophia. Charlotte Sophia. She was consort, and consort means what? Or meant what? Nope. Made her to a king. Consort was another name for queen when they didn't want to have queens. She was not only a person of definite nobility, she was married to a king. Okay. She was married to the king, again, of England. In fact, she is the great, 2 times great, grandmother of King George III. And again, later George VI, to whom Queen Elizabeth of England is married. Therefore, there is black blood in Queen Elizabeth. Charlotte Sophia is her distant relative, her great-grandmother. He shows it in this book. Nobody reads it with understanding. And it should not be that much whether it is or not, because, as I've already stated, there are so many entrance ways of people carrying melanin into the European peoples that it's ridiculous to talk about a pure anything anymore. Because where there is man and woman, there is mating. And where there is mating, there is infusion of blood. Unfortunately, with the hysterics of history, these things become horrendous crimes and begin things to be shoveled under the rug, but the rugs are not deep enough. We also have been told that the African American and the people coming from the land of Kema, where's the land of Kema? Oh, I'm sorry, I meant Ethiopia. Where was once Ethiopia? Oh, you people are crazy. The things that you say. Okay. One thing we've been told is that, and I'll conclude it with this one tonight, is that the many areas that the black man has entered into, the African American, the Negroid person, whichever term you best suit, has been into music, but it has been into the blues, into jazz, and now even into some of the contemporary things. But where the black man has not been strong has been in classical music. He has had operas written about him and has written operas, but he has not performed the music to these stories in the terms of classical composition and operettas. And we're told, of course, that 2 of the most renowned, prolific classicists were Ludwig van Beethoven and Franz Joseph Haydn. Both of these men had black blood. Both of these men had Negroid women, either as great-grandmothers or as grandmothers. And it was the reason why Beethoven studied so much under Haydn, Joseph Haydn, was because of their mixed bloods and this common bloodline they felt they had, and this need for richness and proliferation of music, if you would. Neither of those now are classified as Beethoven, and if you see some of the anglicized, Balkanized, Europeanized portraits of Beethoven, of course, you would not see it. But again, in Sex and Race Volume 2, there's a picture of Ludwig van Beethoven unretouched. And I think it was from a distant book, World's Great Men of Color, his grandmother showed in an inset. Haydn is more difficult to reach, but I have seen pictures, and I forget where now. But if you do the research, you'll find that his mother was of Negro was separate and distinct from anything developed on the European continent, but that the European continent developed as it did because of Africa's gift, not only to the Americas, but to the European continent, which was named after the Princess Europos. And it's open for questions and comments. Yes?
You mentioned the Moor. The first thing that I thought about was Shakespeare's play of Zelle, which is black people viewing there's a moment. That was not, they did not have any plastics about it. I mean, it was very clear that he was black. But they did not have Shakespeare did not do a lot of writing about black. That was one coming out of here.
Shakespeare is an interesting person within his own right. There is, I'm sure you've heard the story, the rumor, that there was no such person as Shakespeare, but that he was a pseudonym for an opponent of one of the fraternal brotherhoods who tried to bring enlightenment back to a people in a sneaky way, from which the church would not have stood there teaching these things straight out. And that most of the things, the reason why Shakespeare is considered, and is, if he is one man, he is indeed a genius, as was George Washington Carver, Nikolai Tesla, Granville Woods. He is a genius behind genius. For one man to write the kind of things that he did about so many subjects and know them so intimately aware about all kinds of countries and their backgrounds and the conspiracies and everything else, is to be able to be genius. But if it was written by a battery of men, getting a message across to certain peoples, to have it preserved in a history, then I'd say we read Shakespeare with the understanding that they may have been a collection of men who tried to keep black history and metaphysics alive, and the whole thing becomes glaringly interesting. And to the ghost, well, the whole bit. Okay. Hamlet has a message. Damien is a pity, has a message. All of these have distinct messages that these collections called Shakespeare. And there is a code, which I will share with you in our deeper metaphysical classes, by which you can research how the name Shakespeare was gotten together. And it is from the Bible, and it is from deep books of masonry combining one. But you have to know the code key in order to do it. That I won't drop on you until you get to advanced classes in metaphysics. Everything here has a reason and basis, just that those very thoughts and minds that you're supposed to read, they take it not to read, or else they take the books and say that they don't exist, or they're called apocryphal. Okay, questions, statements, or comments? Oh, okay, I think I saw there, then front, in the middle, front, and then front and right.
We talked about the Moors going into Europe. You mentioned that took place in 705.
Roughly, I think it's 705, 706, and I think some books listed as 709, but it's roughly about 705 to 706.
That's AD, right?
No. Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay.
I just wanted to mention that what we call the Arabian Peninsula in earlier times was Canaan. Do you agree with that?
The Arabian Peninsula was Canaan, the land of Canaan, Canaan land. I don't know. I'm not sure.
First, that Ethiopia, or what is called Abyssinia now, held the military and peoples were a part of this, what is now called Arabian Peninsula, up until the time of Prophet Muhammad, who went there for sanctuary. And after he couldn't convert the Ethiopians other than Bilal, decided to make a war that has lasted up until today, and they're still fighting in Yemen and Oman for the possession of that part of the peninsula.
Yeah, the Yemenites are definitely fighting, and I heard of the story of Bilal and the sons there, but did not know of the whole treatment. So I thank you for helping me in that, do some more research. Okay.
It seems that we talk about a lot of Africa in the history that sheds more light on that? And you mentioned masonry quite a bit. Is there any black history in connection with that?
So let me answer the first one last. I feel so, yes. Outside of the Prince Hall in prison to General Gage, there's deep, I feel, black history in masonry. And the second part, were the Americas won? Is that what you stated or asked? Were you asking or making a
I was
statement?
asking.
I don't think so. You mean North and South America?
No, South America and Africa.
Oh, okay. Not the Americas and America and Africa won. I don't believe so again. There are some who try to fit the bonnet with the tail and say that these therefore drifted. With, of course, comes the condom displacement tektite theory and, place of shift. I don't believe so. Only not because it doesn't make sense and not because of looking at it what it looks like, but when they have actually sampled the rock strata off the west coast of Africa and the east coast of the Americas, they found some of it just doesn't have different type. There is a common bond on any ocean that has landmass surrounded of the type of things that drifted on both shores. But the rock strata itself was not in the main made up. There are many people who are forced, I feel, forced an amalgamation of these two. But even stronger than that is just a strong belief in metaphysics. And metaphysics has a different explanation for the space now and the oceans between Africa and America. So I say about 30% based on supposedly the findings that just don't quite corroborate all that rock strata, and 70% just on the belief and backing faith in metaphysics.
How do you explain the Negro people down in South America on the coast?
That's next week.
Oh,
The whole class. Africans in America before Columbus. Yes.
I was just looking in this book that I purchased from Afro-American bookstore called What They Never Told You, History of Planet. And I just noticed in here that they have a picture of a 2,000-year-old glider, African aeronautic, that was found in the 4th and 3rd century BC. Do you know anything about that? I'm just looking at the picture here.
Yeah, I've got some pictures. They found them in Peru, and they found them again buried in some of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings at Luxor. They found them in the castles of Valhalla. They have found them in, and again, in Digzita City, right there in Nubia. And you can't get more, I don't say more ancient, but you just can't get any blacker than that. And each time they're found, they're called birds, and they're called kas, which is degradation for the spiritual values of ancient Africa, but nevertheless they are to be called collections of birds. And in our metaphysical classes, again, it's not a reference tonight to metaphysics, but when you start talking about swept-wing, delta-wing aircraft in ancient history, you're talking metaphysics, obviously, because they say ain't no such thing, because there were no writers. But simply, if you look at them and see some of these casement archaeological tag digs that show birds, they are some of the weirdest looking fuselage, tail bending, cockpit welding birds you ever want to see. And many of them have some very strange shapes, even outside of the delta wing type.
Yeah. But in referring to this picture here, I was reading that Circle's book, Black Science, and he did have the same pictures, but he also went ahead to mention that they have been developments in terms of the construction of a prototype that actually flew when given a certain inertia as a glider. So the dimensions are not arbitrary; they were properly chosen because they are prototypes that actually flew when given the thrust of inertia.
Okay, I have no argument with that whatsoever. I would propound it and simply state that if you read some of the ancient texts from lands where the people say, hey, this book is real, the Indian Mahabharata and the Upanishads, which are as strong to them as, say, the Christians believe in the commandments, or the Jewish writings of the Papupa amongst the Mesquite and Mescaleros in their ancient book, and they talk of flight. If you read the treatises under Shabaka in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and he talks in terms of flight and craft. So it is only the European mind that states that men did not fly prior to the Wright brothers. You even remember in the treatises on the 1001 Nights, which is a very metaphysical assemblage of stories, it talks about the flying carpets. And the carpets you'll find were not carpets made like the Persian rugs that people get on. They were actually some very interesting type of carpets when I go out there. Some of these carpets seem to have puffs of smoke coming from them, and so on and so forth. So I simply state that that idea of flight, like as we talked about yesterday, off at Bell, the idea of batteries and electricity is nothing new. When Memphis was lit up, and Knossos was lit up, and Baghdad was lit up, but they hide all of this. So once you hide, then when you reread it, it becomes, wow, did you ever hear this? But those are the books they tell you, don't read those books. Those books are metaphysical. They are occult. And you're right, you should read every piece of occult literature you can. You may not have to believe it, but occult simply means what? Hidden. And that's where you need to start writing. Anything that's hidden that somebody else reads, you should read too, because there must be some reason they hide it.
You also indicate that there are tapes here about pyramids and UFOs. And I just want to make a comment about that. I was looking at my time one night, and there were interviews with somebody who claimed to have had a sighting. And one of the first things he said was that there were some things that appearing like Egyptian hieroglyphics on the UFO itself. This is coming from a very innocent observer who I don't think it meant anything to him, but so I don't think he was making it up. Do you have any comment on that?
Only that's really a different question for a Black History class, which is taking a strange metaphysical tangent, which I love, but understand how you brought in and inflected, not just you, but the way you inflected this metaphysical bit now. I didn't inject metaphysics into Black history, which I try to keep separate. Since you spoke to it, and since I love metaphysics, I'm not going to dodge it. The word hieroglyph, of course, means sacred writings, or writings of the gods. The petroglyphs were those that men wrote, not trying to pay homage to the gods or duplicate the writings of the gods. And in the petroglyphs, of course, in the hieroglyphs, in Tutankhamun's tomb, in Ramesses, in Nebuchadnezzar, and which was this other, the one that had a lot of the Syrian, Osiris, Osiris, and a ruler Thothmes. They had what happened in the heavens and what happened on earth. And they always show these winged creatures, these winged pyramids, and what they call LITRE, as they really break it down now, light literatures, or these flying lights. And they have been found in the tombs, of course. And, of course, the most recent rumor, when they had this big computer that they took over there, taking over 1 million photographs over a year, trying to find out secret passageways or secret compartments or areas in the tomb based on radiation, where, they bombarded it again, and it was a hollow space that would show up on the graph. Not only did they find that the pyramid changed its shape every 72 hours, this density mass, which is a physical impossibility on our basic physics, but they also supposedly found the outline of something that may have been beneath the pyramid, and now the rumor is that they may have found a spacecraft beneath the pyramid of Khufu. That is a rumor. They definitely have not stated that. They released that in broad circles. So the rumors persist and bound about UFOs, if you would, but in our metaphysical classes we get into them pretty deeply.
But in regards to pyramids, is it still true that they have never discovered how the pyramids were built?
Oh, they say they know. I have a whole class again in metaphysics on pyramids. comments as we must wind down now. If there are any burning ones, please share them. If they're not, then that is kind of complete. All right, this was our fourth class. We have 2 more classes in Black History. Next week will be our 5th class, and next week we will get into some of the things that they have found now and the history that is being taught now of what may have been the ancient Americas, including the Olmecs, including the mound builders, including some of the things that they said about Cortez and Montezuma, many of the tribes, so-called, the nations that were here, and just a whole different perspective. And when you begin to see some of the so-called mounds and some of the so-called Indian settlements, and then I show you what restored these Indian settlements may have looked like, you probably want to say again, we better go back and blow our minds, because it's quite interesting. Yeah. We live on a very interesting planet. We have a very interesting way of studying it. Thank you very much. May the Creator bless you. Also, too, if you remember, I do have the tapes today. The police have been very busy. You say you want them. They're now available. We have last week's class on Nubia, Egypt, which is available on a double cassette at 1250. It's 2 different cassette tapes, close to 180 minutes. And we do have the one where Dr. Fulton was here, the one on cancer, and our whole look at cancer, its cures, and its possibilities, and in her statements throughout speaking. Also, hope you would begin to listen to our show on Opinion. It's called Opinion on WBEE, Saturday mornings at 9. We've got a wang-dangy-doo of a show for you this Saturday. It's on the Black Airmen, and it looks at the females that were in the air, not the Air Force, but the what do you call it, aerodynamics and aeronautics, the parachutists, and the fighter pilots, as we begin to compare Top Gun and Iron Eagle, with some of the things that actually happened with the 99th and 332nd. We're going to have a couple of men who actually flew in the 99th, one old-timer who has a wealth of information, Sammy Rayner, and Judge Rogers, who's a appellate court judge now, will also be there, one of the original 99 members. I think you ought to really love that show. And we have some talk about things that you wouldn't believe. And if you talk about prejudice again, find out what they did not only in the Air Force, but find out what they did at some of these airports to stop black people from learning how to fly. And then, of course, we even interview the man that flew with the man who flew Emperor Haile Selassie around, and some of the things that he saw when he flew over some of the areas of Egypt, high above the pyramids and so. Interesting show. I know you're going to love it, and please tune in. That one's for free. Okay? Thank you very much.